Okay, so this week is Parshas Kiseitse, which means going out. And in this week's Torah portion, there are, how many mitzvot are there in the Torah?
613.
613. In this week's Torah portion alone, there are 74 mitzvot. So there's a lot. So you can imagine I had a very hard time figuring out what to speak about because there's 74 different things that I could speak about, right? So I just want to tell you a few of the things that are mentioned in this week's Torah portion, and then we'll talk about one of them in particular. So there's about Hashavat Aveda. Anyone know what that means?
Returning a lost item.
Exactly. When you find something, if you find something that someone lost, it's actually a mitzvah to return it to the lost owner. And that's why you'll see on some of the religious chats, you'll see like, this person lost their tefillin and this airport, pass it on to whoever knows. And somehow you'll see it was found, it was discovered. The Jewish network is really amazing, but you'll find people really going to all lengths to really. I remember I have a sister-in-law who when the kids were little, we used to go all the way to Lakewood from Toronto. And I remember she one time sent me back this little sock that we left. Like, I didn't need the sock. But one of my kids left the sock. She wanted to do the mitzvah of Hashavat Aveda, of returning a lost object. So that's in this week's Torah portion. We also have about burial, dignity, giving dignity to people who have passed away. We have the law of Yibum. Remember when we were learning about Shavuot and we said that Rus approached Boaz and said, you're my closest of kin, you're my closest relative, so marry me, right? Because it's your obligation to marry me. That's the mitzvah of Yibum that's in this week's Torah portion as well. There's about interest, how we're not allowed to take interest from fellow Jews. And that's why if someone has a business, they'll do a whole different thing where it's not them who's taking the interest, but it would be the entity or the company that's doing it. So there's all these legalistic ways of doing these things. There's about kilaim, which you're not allowed to mix, forbidden mixes. And one of the forbidden mixes is shatnez. That's why we check our clothes, that there's not a mixture of wool and linen in our clothes. And there's these special shatnez laboratories. If you buy a wool suit, especially a man's suit, they often have shatnez in it, threads of shatnez in a wool suit. So you would check it, and they check it. They do not destroy the garment. They make sure they do it very carefully, but they know exactly where to check where there might be shatnez, and usually they can fix it so that there's no shatnez in it.
I'm sorry for one
Sure.
minute. Marlene doesn't know why there is the shatnez.
Why do we have this
Right.
mitzvah of shatnez?
The one thing I think, if I learned correctly, is that it reminds Hashem of the sacrifice of Cain, because it was like the worst stuff, but there was a mixture of wolves and linen in there, but it was not. And I remember, and I read it. I forget where I read it, but the mixture of that, it's a possible answer. It's not the end, but it could be that it reminds Hashem of that sacrifice that
Interesting.
So it gets him upset. So
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, on a, I wouldn't say a basic level, on a more mystical level, we believe that everything has its own energy and its own mission. And so, even today, we're so into energy fields, and different people have different kinds of energy fields. So the Torah is telling us that different items have their own energy fields and their own purpose and their own mission. And don't mix them, because my mission is different than your mission. And this person, so shatnez, wool, and linen are two different, they each correspond Kabbalistically to different energy levels. And so they cannot be mixed into a new garment. In other words, you can have it one, like you could put it on a table, but when you're mixing them together, like sewing them together, you're mixing it into a new garment, and then they each lose their own unique powers or spiritual energy fields. And that's the basic reason. We also don't mix different fruits or different vegetation to make it. If once it is done, you can eat it, but you were not allowed to be the ones to actually mix that combination to create this new fruit, because you're losing the uniqueness of each individual thing. So that's the basic
So farmers
reason.
in Israel won't mix. They don't mix fruits.
Once it's already a new For example, what's things that are
Pluto, or Pluto, I call the Plutos.
right. So once it already is that, you're taking that's already been mixed. You
Right.
can use the seeds of that to continue on to that species. But the original mixing,
It has to be from a non-Jew, I guess.
right? We don't do that. Yeah. So there's also the mitzvah of paying our workers on time, especially if they're day workers. Make sure you pay them by the end of the day. If we have people helping in our home, unless they know that you're not paying them that day, you should try to pay them on time, pay them that day. There's the mitzvah of shiluach hakan. Anyone know what that is?
Oh, the bird, right?
The bird, right. So if you see, and sometimes we have this, especially in our backyards here, because we live in such forest areas, you sometimes have a bird's nest. And if you want to take the eggs of the bird, well, nowadays we don't really take the birds of the egg, but if you want to take the bird's eggs, you need to send away the bird before taking the eggs, because it's compassion for the mother. Don't kill the, don't take the.
Picture of the four birdies that, the hat they had.
Well, that's even like,
In the nest.
yeah.
Yeah, I had a nest, and there were 5 eggs, and they were, not that I wasn't gonna take their eggs out and eat raw,
Right.
but 5 they hatched, and when they weren't, and they were making little, it was so sweet, and then they just flew away.
They flew away, right.
It was
Right.
so sweet, I have the pictures still, I love it.
But if you want to take the egg, like if you need to take it for eating or whatever, then you make sure the bird is not there before, you take the egg, so that the bird shouldn't be pained from it. That's the mitzvah. There's also the mitzvah of lo yavo amoni umoavi b'kal Hashem, that we cannot have a Moavi and Ammoni. And if you remember when we learned the whole story of Rus, we were talking about how this was the mitzvah. It's in this week's Torah portion that you cannot have an Ammoni and Moavi. And we said then that it only refers to the male ones, because the male ones were they were the ones that went out to war. They would be the ones to go out to the borders, and they did not allow the Jews to purchase merchandise from them, even though it was beneficial for both. So therefore the Torah says, if you have this quality of cruelty in you, you don't belong in the nation of God. But the women were not the ones who would go out to the outside, to the outskirts of the town, and therefore the woman could be, and that's why Rus, we said, was okay. She was okay to be married and to convert into the Jewish people. But this is the parsha where you actually have it. So these are just a few of the interesting things, but like I said, there was actually 74 different mitzvot in this week's Torah portion. But the Torah portion starts off with war and ends off with war. And it starts off with ki tetzeh, when you go out to war on your enemies. When you go out to war, and it's interesting because it talks about ki tetzeh, when you go out, and it's kind of telling us going out is something that is not natural. It's not naturally us. We have to go out to war because naturally we don't like to go out to war. Naturally we're very peace-loving, but the point would be to go out to war to create, because there is immorality around you, or you need to change over the nation that is causing this immorality, to bring in the light of God, so you need to go out to war. This is also talking about on our day-to-day basis. So whenever we have Torah, there's always different levels of what it's talking about. And it's talking about on our level, we all go out to war every single day. We all battle so many struggles and challenges and overcoming so many things in our day-to-day life. So it's talking ki tetzeh l'milchama, when you're going out to war, when you're going out and you have to fight yourself, when you have to fight another person, when you're fighting against something that, in order to get to your mission, in order to do your purpose in the world, you're going out to war. And we're always fighting. We're fighting our procrastination, we're fighting our laziness, we're fighting our lack of motivation, we're fighting so many parts within us in order to achieve our mission and achieve what we need to do in this world. We're going out to war. So when you're going out to war, you should know it's al oivecha. When you go out to war, on your enemies. And it really should say with your enemies. You're going out to war, you're fighting with your enemies, right? Not when you're going out to war on your enemies. And very, very specifically, the Torah is teaching us here, when it says al oivecha, you're going out to fight on your enemies. that this is how we have to look at our enemies, whether they're actually physical enemies, which we unfortunately have, or it's those enemies that we're fighting within, of those characteristics or those qualities that we're trying to overcome. When we are fighting at our enemies or our own qualities that we're trying to overcome, we should know you're al oivecha. You are above your enemies. You can do it. Don't ever look at the enemy as something that is going to overpower you and is going to overtake you. If you're going out to fight for a good reason, if you're going out to fight, unfortunately, because you need to go out to fight, al oivecha, if you're going with God on your side, you are always going to overcome your enemies. And similarly, when we fight those instincts, those characteristics, those qualities within us that are stopping us and preventing us from doing God's work, from doing God's mission, we should know you're al oivecha. You are going to be victorious on your enemies. You are going to win. And we need to go with that kind of confidence that, yes, I'm going to do it. I'm going to overcome, and I have the ability to overcome because God is on my side. So when you are going out to war on your enemies, and this could be any challenge, any struggle that you're dealing with in your life, it says also, vishavisa shivyo, you should take captives. If you happen to see someone and you decide to take captives in order to win the war. And the lesson and the lesson here is, what does it mean that you should take captives? It means when you are going through a struggle, when you are dealing with a challenge in your life, realize that number one, you're gonna overcome it, you're gonna be successful. But then even once you're successful, bring back captives. What does it mean, bring back captives? It means bring back the lessons of the war. Learn from it. So you've gone through a struggle. Don't look at it as a struggle as just something that I've got to overcome. I've got to get through this. I've got to just fight against this. But look at the struggle as something that should be a lesson for you, that you should bring back from that struggle, from that challenge, from that difficulty that you've gone through in life. Bring back that beautiful lesson. Bring back that wealth of understanding, that wealth of sensitivity, that tremendous newfound knowledge that you've gained from that struggle, so that the struggle itself becomes something that turns into something positive. Bring back the captive. Bring back that lesson. Bring back that understanding, that new knowledge, that new awareness, that newfound sensitivity that you learn about yourself or about your surroundings. Another thought that was said about this, that you should bring back captives, is that we can really learn even from the Yetzer Hara, the evil part within us, that voice within us that tells us you can't and you won't succeed and don't bother, don't even try, and tries to stop us, that voice within us that tries to stop us from doing what we know is right. And there was a story told of this elderly person who decided that he has to wake up very early in the morning. He's going to get up an hour earlier in the morning in order to do his Torah study. And his alarm rings and he's like, I'm ready to press the snooze button because that's what we all want to do in the morning. And instead he says, and he gets this thought inside of him like, I'm old. Why do I need to get up so early? Let me sleep a little longer. And he immediately answers that voice inside of him. He says, hey, you voice, I'm not going to listen to you. You're older than me. You were created at the beginning of creation. This is the Yetzer Hara that was created at the beginning of creation. You're even older than me. And look, you're up even before I'm up. Right? So if we can sometimes talk to ourselves in that way, or learn from that part of us, that voice within us, that Yetzer Hara that's always telling us don't, and don't try, and don't even bother, and enjoy life, and just make the best of life, and instead of trying to strive for something higher. If we can just tell that voice, we know you. You've been around for far too long. and we're not listening to you. We're going to have the perseverance. We're learning from you how not to listen to you. We're learning from you to persevere. We're learning from you how this Yetzer Hara is so constantly persevering, and he's always on track. He's always trying to do his job. His job is to convince us not to do our job, because this is the way that we have free choice. That's what the Yetzer Hara was created for. That's what the opposing forces were created for, so that we can overcome it and do our job. But if it's doing its job so well, we can learn from it how to do our job so well, to really do our mission and do what God wants of us. So this is talking about going to war, overcoming our challenges, overcoming our struggles. When we go to war on our enemies, this is how we go to war. And when we talk about this being on a more personal level, when we go to war, so there's an active war, and then there's a more peaceful war. What's the active war? The active war is when we fight against those parts of us that doesn't want to do God's mission, that doesn't want to act in a spiritual way, that doesn't want us to lead a spiritual life. And what are the moments in the day when we are particularly in this battle? It says those moments are when we pray, because prayer is so hard. Prayer is when you get all these thoughts that unfocused, that try to take you away from what you're saying. It's a real battle. That's why it's called a real avodah. It's a real hard work, battling. And you have to, take all that you got in order to fight it, in order to really focus, and in order to really concentrate. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is coming, so we know that. It's hard to sit in the shul and to really focus the whole time on what we're really saying and what we're trying to accomplish with our prayers. So that's the battle. That's a fierce battle. But then there's also an easier battle, and the more peaceful battle, it says, is not tefillah, is not prayer, but it's Torah study. Torah study is accomplishing also that change in priority, but in a more subtle way. We just imbibe the Torah study. You spend a few minutes thinking about something, hearing a class, studying here. It's not, the struggle isn't there, and it becomes a part of our being. So these are two different ways that we, on our personal level, we go out to war. Whether we do it in the wars of prayer, and that's important. We start our day with prayer because that sets the tone for the whole day, but it could be an intense battle. Or throughout our day, just hearing a little snippet of Torah study, a little thought of Torah study that also can change our perspective and can affect us, but in a more peaceful way. So this is what we're talking about, going to war on our enemies. Now, at the very, very end of this week's Torah portion, we have a mitzvah of remembering Amalek. And this is, we actually read this, it's called Parshat Zachar. We read it the Shabbos before Purim, because Purim is when Amalek tried to kill us. So we read this part of the Torah in the Shabbos before Purim, but this is where it's actually written in this week's Torah portion. We read it as the maftir, as the maftir on that week's parsha, but this is where it comes from. And I want to talk a little about Amalek and what this means. So the mitzvah is twofold. We're told to remember, Zachor es asher asalacha Amalek. Remember what Amalek did to you. And by the way, every single day there's 6 different remembrances that we say. It's called Sheshes Zechiros. It's part of the prayers. It's right at the very end of the prayer. And this is one of the prayers that we actually say. This is what we need to remember every single day. Remember what Amalek did to you on your way out of Egypt. Asher karcha baderech, that they met you on the way. Vayizanet b'cha kol hanechashalim acharecha, and they attacked all those from the back of you, those that were weak. Those were the ones that they attacked. Ve'ata ayef b'yagei, and you were so tired and you were so over strenuous. V'lo yirei Elokim, and you did not fear God. V'haya b'heineach Hashem Elokecha lecha mikol avecha misaviv, and it will be a time when God will remove all your enemies from around you. Timche es zecher Amalek, you must destroy the memory of Amalek. Mitachas hashamayim, from under the heavens. Lo tishkach, do not forget. So there's the mitzvah of zachar, remembering. Remember what Amalek did to you. And then there's the mitzvah of actually destroying Amalek and not forgetting. Destroy them, don't forget about this. So the mitzvah is actually to destroy Amalek if we know that somebody is an Amalekite. And usually it will be quite clear, because the characteristics of an Amalekite is this terrible hatred to the Jewish people. It says that their hand is on the throne of God. They don't want any godliness in this world. They don't want any Jews in this world. Those people who are saying no Jews, no matter where you live, whether it's in Israel, whether it's in America, destroy you all. These are the people this is the quality of Amalekites. Because nowadays it says all the nations are mixed together. So we don't know which nation is actually Amalekites, and the nations have been mixed together. So there isn't that much of a pure nation anymore that we can identify, oh, this is Amalek. But we can see on a spiritual level who is Amalek, and that is people who wish to destroy the Jewish people. And unfortunately,
there are a lot of them.
we've seen that. We see it today. We've seen it in the Holocaust. I mean, this was obvious shows of Amalek, of who Amalek is, for no gain whatsoever, just because of this inborn hatred for you. It's not that they're trying to get something, and because of it, they're going to advance because of it. But to the contrary, even if it destroys them, that's fine. We'll kill ourselves as long as we kill you. And we see that in the Holocaust. We see that this was even at the very end of the Holocaust, the Nazis were ready. Hitler, Yamach Shemo, was ready to lose the war, to destroy everything. He knew it was finished, but let's kill as many Jews as we can. Let's gaz as many Jews as we can. And today, unfortunately, we see it as well. Those who are willing to even kill themselves, as long as I'm also killing some Jews with me, as long as I'm ready to kill. And I think Sinwar, Yamach Shemo, said as well, we're ready to give 3 million Gazans, we're ready to kill them all, as long as we get, as long as we kill the Jews as well. So this is definitely the characteristic of Amalek. If we would be living in our own land with our king, like we'll be in the time of Mashiach, then we would have an obligation to kill them. It's once we're settled in the land of Israel with our own king, knowing who they are, then this would be our obligation to kill them out, because not killing them just creates, we see, unfortunately, we see this so clearly, like Sinwar was in the hospital in Israel and he was saved. So this lack of, we've done the opposite of, not only did we not kill him, we actually saved him. And then what happens from it, we see this horrible, horrible destruction and killing and hostages and all this part of his mastermind plan. So this is the quality of Amalek. So let's talk about who Amalek is to begin with. So first of all, we know that there was Esav who hated Yaakov. Esav's brother was Yaakov. And Esav had a son whose name was Eliphaz, who married a concubine. Her name was Timnah, and their child was this Amalek. And when the Jewish people left Egypt, this is what the pasuk is telling us. Remember what Amalek did to you. The Jewish people had just left Egypt. There was these miracles, and the whole world was talking about these miracles because people heard about them far and wide. The 10 plagues, everything that was happening to them, all the different miracles that helped them to leave this terrible, corrupt land. And they're traveling towards Sinai. They're in the Sinai desert, and the ones in the back means the ones that were spiritually tired, spiritually exhausted from their whole ordeal. These are the ones that Amalek attacks, and they attack for no reason. It wasn't like it was on their border. It wasn't like it was on their country. It wasn't like there was any benefit for them, but they attack simply because of their hatred of the Jewish people. So they decide to attack, and they they know when they're attacking that they're not going to win, but it doesn't matter. To them, they'll just attack for the sake of attacking. And this is compared to a person who has, a Midrash explains that this is like a person who starts this very hot bath, and the bath is boiling hot, and one person jumps into the bath, and that person burns himself. But after that, the bath is now cooled off for others to do it. And that was what happened when Amalek did this. They jumped into the hot bath, knowing that they'd burn themselves, knowing that they wouldn't win, but meanwhile, they've cooled it off for other people to now attack the Jewish people, because people were not anymore as so afraid, because look, Amalek attacked them. That first effort has already been done. They've cooled off the bath. And that's why God says it's time to eradicate Amalek. This is a mitzvah that you have to remember and do not forget. And this is something that you have to remember what they did always, to always remember that. Now we have a little bit later on, when we're in the land of Israel during the time period of the kings, we have again a fighting with Amalek, and this was during the time of Shaul, the King Shaul, and he fought the Amalekites. He was told by the prophet Samuel, to make sure you eradicate the Amalekites. Not only eradicate them, but any of their property. We can't have any remembrance of them. We don't want to even remember them, because they're such an evil people. We don't even want to have any trace of them. Kill them all out. And Shaul won the war with the Amalekites, but he looked at their flocks and he said, why should I kill out the choicest of the flocks? Let me use this instead as a sacrifice. Use it as a karban. I'll sacrifice this to God. It's a better usage than just killing out the flocks. And that was wrong. He also did not destroy the king of Amalek. His name was Agag. And as a result of that, it says Shmuel was very, very upset with him, and he told him that he has now just lost the privilege of being king. King David would take over from him. And Shmuel, it says, did kill this king Agag, but it was not until he had already impregnated somebody, and this child continued on, and Amalek therefore continued on. And who was this Amalek that continued on? Generations later, we have Haman from the story of Purim. And it's this Haman who again rose up to destroy the Jewish people for no rhyme or reason, other than the fact that he hated them, other than the fact that he was just consumed with this hatred for them.
Why would Shaul want to keep him alive, the king? What was he?
He was thinking, I guess, the king, maybe we should have to.
So they could be king buddies, or I don't know, do king things that go out and do king things. I don't know.
That's a good question. It's like, why some heads of state feel like, the heads of state is not to be killed. They deserve special treatment. So that was definitely a mistake. And later on in the time period of Purim, the descendant of Shaul was Esther and Mordechai, and they corrected what their ancestor Shaul neglected to do in the war against Haman, in killing Haman and his children. And therefore we read this on the Shabbos right before Purim. So the word Amalek, let's get into numerology now. Let's get into the numbers. Let's do the value of each of the letters, the numeric value of Amalek. We have the letter Ayin, which is 70. We have the letter Mem, which is 40. We have the letter Lamed, which is 30. And we have the letter Kuf, which is 100. So we have 100 plus 70 plus 40 plus 30. We have 100 plus 40 is? We have 240, exactly. Good, she's good with numbers. 240. There's another word that has the same value as Amalek, and that is the word Safek, which means doubt. Let's do the word Safek. Samach is 60. Pei is 80. And Kuf is 100. So 100 plus 80 plus 60 is 240. So Amalek and Safek come together. What is Amalek today? Amalek today, what is Amalek inside? Like again, whenever we talk about any nation or any idea in the Torah, there's the idea and there's the mitzvah of the Torah on the base surface level. And then there's a deeper understanding of it, a more metaphorical, if you would, understanding of it. So on the base level, Amalek is those nations that want to destroy Judaism, that want to destroy the Jewish people, that have this innate hatred for the Jewish people. And unfortunately, we see this till today. And for no reason, for no gain of their own. On a more subtle level, what does this nation of Amalek represent? It represents a quality. Every nation represents different qualities. And the nation of Amalek represents a quality that is found within us as well, within everybody as well. And this is something that we need to eradicate from within ourselves. What is that quality of Amalek? It's this quality of doubt. This planting this doubt in you. It's also this quality, it says, Asher karcha baderach, they met you on the way, they happened to meet you on the way, they made sure to meet you on the way. If we look at the word Asher karcha, we have in the word karcha, kar. What does kar mean?
Cold.
Cold. So Amalek is this nation, like that bathtub. They cool you off and they introduce this idea of doubt in your head. This idea of doubt in faith. This idea of doubt, do I really need to do this? Is this really important? Mm-hmm. And it's this doubt that gnaws at you. It really like eats away at you.
Yeah.
You know, when you talk about rational argument, you know, so you have an argument and you're rationally fighting it. This one says this and that one says that. And both opinions, you know, you can fight it. And once you fight it, it's gone. It just dissipates. It's gone. You fought that rationally. You fought against that argument, and you showed them. You proved them how they were wrong in their thinking. Mm-hmm. Doubt is something that just snakes its way into you. It just comes into you. You can't even fight it. You can't fight it with the arguments because it's just this doubt. It's this feeling of cooling you off. It's this feeling when you hear something so inspiring and everyone's so inspired by this and let's do it. And someone says, oh, that's nothing. Exactly. It's nothing. What's that? It's that cynical voice. Did it argue with any of the points that were said? No, it didn't argue.
Right.
If it argued, you could argue back and you could show where it's wrong.
That's the problem. They government, especially, you think they can argue with a group that there's no logic.
There's no
You can't
logic.
logically argue with anybody that didn't logically argue that point to begin with.
Exactly.
You know? So
Exactly.
stop arguing with them. There's no forget it. Just go, and which is finally what the U.S. woke up and did today. They killed a bunch of Houthis, whatever you call them, Houthis, whatever. Whatever. You know, yeah, they finally, you know, it's getting to them finally.
To them, but they
We
finally
cannot
get.
settle with them, you know.
Right. Yes.
Finally.
Yes. So on our own personal level, it's that voice that says, "Oh, whatever." You know, you ever hear you sing, "Oh, whatever." What is whatever? This way, that way. You're not addressing the issue. You just say, "Oh, whatever," or "It's not important." You know, that's that voice of doubt that's within all of us sometimes. You know, you want to do something, you're excited to do something, you have a goal, you have a mission, you've decided this is important to you, this is something that you want to achieve, and it's that voice that says, whatever, so you didn't, you know, no big deal. It's that voice within us that really, so what, who cares, that really is influencing us. That is the voice of Amalek within us. How do we fight this voice of Amalek? We fight it by zachar, remembering. We have to remember who we are, what we are. Because you see, this voice also says to us, you think you're so great? Who are you? It introduces this doubt. You think you're so holy? You think you can really do it? It introduces this doubt without rationally arguing about it, but it stops you from doing what you feel you need to do. It stops you from accomplishing what you need to do by sowing this doubt in you, by sowing these seeds of doubt that really grow into something huge, so you stop believing in your own capabilities. It says to you, you think you can do that? Oh, come on. Who do you think you are? You think you can accomplish that? You think you're really a holy person? You think you're really such a ... Come on, get real. It's not arguing with anything that you're doing. It's just sowing the doubt in you. So how do we fight that? We fight it by remembering who we are and our connection to God. We fight it by our conviction, with our unconditional conviction of saying, I'm not going to listen to this voice. I'm going to go ahead and do it. I'm going to do what I need to do. I'm not even going to listen. Just like it doesn't talk with rationale, you can't answer it with this rational argument. You need to answer it with this strong, unswerving commitment to your goal by saying, this is who I am. This is who I am as the Jewish people. This is the faith that I have. This faith that I have, this connection that I have to God is something that is so real, I don't even need to talk about it. I'm going to act on it. I'm going to make sure that I do, rather than go into this whole argument of should I or shouldn't I. This is who I am. Remember what they did to you. Do not forget who you are. Do not forget that you have this inborn faith within you. When the voice of doubt comes and it raises its voice, remember who you are. Remember this voice within you that you've seen at Sinai. You stood there. Your neshama saw godliness. Remember your connection to God. Remember that you have this part of you that is a part of God, a soul, a divine being is what you are. Remember that. And in this way, you can fight it through action, because it is trying to stop you from action. Again, when we remember when they actually came, when Amalek came, it was when the Jewish people had left Egypt. They're on their way to Sinai to get the Torah. Amalek hates when we do action. It hates when we actually act as Jews. It hates when we go ahead and actually do mitzvot. It tried to stop us from doing the mitzvot. And the way that we fight it is by saying we are going to fight it all the way. Not with convincing and arguments and all that and rationale, because it's not coming from rationale. It's trying to cool us off. It's trying to say, don't be so excited about God. Don't be so excited about Torah. Don't be so excited about mitzvot. Don't be so excited about being a Jew. And we say, Al tishkach, do not forget what you are. Do not forget your origins. Do not forget how strong that connection to God is, how strong your faith actually is. Because your faith is unbreakable. Don't listen to this voice of doubt. Act with conviction on who you are. That's the answer that we have to it.
Why does Amalek hate us so much? Or that's a different
topic. It's a great question. It's just an inborn spiritual thing that like you can't even understand it. It's just something that's so inborn. What? Look at in political, like what's going on.
It's like,
why do they hate us? You know why? And it okay, so first you say, well, it's because the Jewish people are in the land of Israel and they want that land. It's not the land of Israel. It's wherever we are.
Right, exactly.
It's wherever we are. You know, first they tell us, you know, leave our lands. They hate us because we're in their lands. Then we're in our own land, and that's no good.
Still not good, right?
They hate us no matter what. If you look at World War II, same thing. What was the hatred about the Jew? It was this terrible, terrible hatred. Hitler said it was because the Jews are the conscience of the world.
Right.
And even if there's one Jew alive, that's going to remind us, it's going to be this conscience that tells us not to be immoral. So it's just this spiritual thing. We can't really understand it other than this spiritual thing that is created specifically to try to stop us and just try to stop. It's a force against good to stop the good in this world so that there is free choice in this world. That's the only way that we can understand it. And it says it's like their hand, their hand is on God's throne, meaning they're trying to fight against God. That's their purpose. That's the purpose for which they were created. And the only way to fight that is total eradication.
Yeah, that's it.
Total eradication. And that's what we actually see when when the Jewish people were fighting Amalek. It says that Moshe's hands were lifted up, and on one side stood Aaron, and the other side stood Hur, and they were holding up his hands so that the people would, when his hands were lifted, they would win over the Amalekites. And when his hands, grew heavy and he couldn't anymore hold them up, that's why Aaron held it and Hur held it. But at the beginning, when his hands were getting tired and he couldn't hold it up, that was when they lost against the battle. And what does it mean his hands? Is it really his hands that had the power? But his hands were upwards, meaning showing them, look towards God. Remember, who are you connected to? Remember this connection of who you are, and that is God's chosen people. And when we remember that, when we look up, when we see that, that is when we can overcome this whole feeling of Amalek, this whole pervasive understanding of really appreciating who we are and not letting that doubt seep in, not letting that coldness seep in. So that, it's interesting. There was a woman who came to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and she said, I have very negative traits in me. I have very bad characteristics. I'm just not a nice person. I'm like a very not nice person. This is part of who I am. And as much as I try not to be that way, this is who I am. And the Rebbe said to her, stop thinking about yourself. Just go out and do actions. Make sure every day you go out and do a favor for somebody and do a kindness for somebody, and then you'll change. You, and by nature, will change. When you start thinking about I am this way and I'm not, and how to work on myself, and you're immersing yourself in the negativity of who you are, and you're increasing that's power. Instead, go out and do things. Fight the seeds of doubt that's in you. Fight it by positivity, by actually doing things. There was another woman, it says, she had a lot of anxiety. And she also came to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, again, don't think about your anxiety, because the more you think about it, the more power you give to it. Just go out at weddings. Go to the weddings and dance at the weddings. And the more you dance at the weddings, the more you'll forget about your anxiety, and the more you'll just be filled with joy. So these are examples of how we fight this Amalek within us, how we fight this negativity, this seeds of doubt, this coldness within us, by doing actions. Don't dwell on the negativity or how much I am this way or that way. Just do actions. Just fight it without the rational thinking and the rational process, and should I do it this way or that way? Just go ahead and do it irrationally. Do it in such an irrational way, all the way, with such conviction, saying, this is who I am, this is who I'm connected to, this is my persona of what I want to be. And interestingly, it says, here it says, Timcha Zecher Amalek, you should destroy the memory of Amalek. Elsewhere, where it talks about Amalek as well, it talks about, in Exodus, it says, Macho Emcha, God promises, I will destroy Amalek. And what we learn from here is that we're not going to ever be capable of completely destroying Amalek. God is going to have to help us and actually destroy this memory of Amalek. But we're not freed from doing our effort and doing our part of trying. So this relates to every person. We might not completely eradicate those seeds of doubt. We might not eradicate those feelings of being cold, that feeling of just cooling us off, but we need to do our part and just try to eradicate it by going forward, by moving forward, and completely with such conviction saying, this is who I am and this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to listen to any of that negativity, any of those voices within. And we're promised, if we do that, then it says at the beginning of the Torah portion, what we started off with, Kitz Heitzei La Milchama Alevecha. You're going to go to war on your enemies. You will overcome your enemies. You will overcome your internal enemies. You will overcome your outside enemies, your external enemies, and go with that attitude that you are going to win. And when we go with that attitude, indeed, we will win.
Thank you so much.
Amen.